bits of it and go like, we have no fucking clue. No fucking clue which way the world is going to turn in 5 minutes. And we're running one of these grand experiments like, let's just stop, have children. And I to some extent, like, I'm just fascinated to watch that show. And in another way, I'd like to be like on the other side of it, reading the book about it, where we were done with that and we went back to 2.1 plus. So anyway, I think this is also why it's good to have some of these crossing streams, that we're on a technical stream for programmers and we're going like, do you know what? You should have kids. That's what you should do now. I think some of that encouragement is actually good. And I think we've lost some of that in this modern era of postmodernism, that every choice is equally valid and you just do whatever's right for you. We were just talking about that. Like, I'm actually on board with that in some ways. Like, that's that duality that fights inside your head. Like, do you know what? Maybe there are things that are just like good. Maybe there are higher virtues. Maybe there are things that we should push people somewhat towards pursuing, because it's going to be good for them and it's going to be good for all of us. That's not a fully formed political theory in any shape or form.
Yeah, along with that, I think a lot of the sort of things that we've talked about as they apply to programming, like a quote that I really like was, meaningful problems are the most valuable human motivators, about finding problems at work and then like getting value out of that. But it's also sort of like, a more broadly speaking, like it's a meaningful problem to like figure out how to be a good dad. And like that gives me a lot of motivation in my life. But I am getting told via the time, and also a great question from Lex, that we are about to transition into top shelf time. So that means if you are in Top Shelf in Prime's Discord, stop sending messages in Top Shelf, but just ask a question and then thumb up or thumb down them so that we can answer them. So don't type anything in here. We're going to delete the messages if it's not a question so that I can ask them to DHH. But we'll start off with our question from the Lex Friedman. Great conversation, Prime, Tej, and DHH. Question for all three. From your perspective as NeoVim users, welcome to the club, by the way. What to you are the biggest pros and cons of Cursor? Please don't kill me for this question. Laughing emoji in a donation message too. Impressive to go for laughing emoji in a donation. P.S. See you later, Prime. Keep up the great work. That one was just from Lex to you, Prime. I just wanted to make sure you saw that. So,
thank you.
So Cursor as the first sort of top shelf question.
You want me to go?
Yeah, we do.
Everybody already knows our opinions. I shout my opinions every day live. You're the one that's.
Yeah. All right. I'll set it up. And the setup is, I'm undecided. And I'm undecided in the sense that I like a lot of what AI has brought to the table. I feel like the projects I've done since AI has been available, I have enjoyed slightly more. And the fun thing about enjoying them slightly more is not that AI is writing my code. It is that AI is a superior Google, is a superior Stack Overflow, is a superior API doc, whatever. It's a superior way for me to get answers to the questions that I have in real time without all the work. It feels a little bit like we were talking earlier about what it was like learning programming for the internet. Do you know what? I'm sure some people look back upon that with some degree of nostalgia. I don't, because it didn't work for me. I didn't learn programming before the internet. It literally took the internet for me to learn programming. And part of that was that there was a Google or an Alta Vista before that, and you could search for things and you could find out. And other people had the same problems, and it was better and it was faster. I do not want to go back. I don't want to go back to the pre-internet age of programming. Even though I'm sure there was some cool shit going on and some wizards figured it out, I wasn't one of them. I wasn't part of that wizard club that could figure it out without the internet. So that setup is to say that, like, I enjoy AI as a better version of that. What I have not enjoyed is to have AI write my code. And I got a small taste of it in a recent project I did with Omecoop. Omecoop is my sort of remix, if you want to call it that, of Ubuntu that sets up a takes a fresh Ubuntu and turns it into a programming environment that I would like to use. That is literally what I do use. And I decided quite early on to write it all in Bash. And one of the reasons I wanted to write it all in Bash was Ruby could do this. Ruby's a great language for writing shell integrations and whatever. But I hadn't done that much Bash, and I was like, you know what? This seems like the right pressure. I don't want to do too much. This shouldn't just do everything. It should do just enough. Bash is the right language for installing packages and a few other things. It'll have the good constraints. And I was like, I'm not a Bash expert. So AI really helped me on early on, just like, oh, I want to write this. And I'd usually write a piece of Ruby, and then I'd ask for the Bash version. And I really like that because of the initial speed up. But what I also found, what was so easy to keep the training wheels on. Like I found myself asking AI the same question for the 4th time because I somehow had picked up on the fact that I didn't need to remember anything. And then I realized, you know what? I don't like that. Like the training wheels are great when you're first learning to balance, but if you keep it on forever, you're never going to fucking find balance. You're never going to get the true understanding and so forth. So I have a very mixed relationship with it where I really enjoy it as a better Google, as a better Stack Overflow. I enjoy it even almost like as a sort of pair programmer, AI pair programmer who doesn't drive, who's just there to give suggestions, to know the API, to do all these other things. But the second it starts wanting to autocomplete my code, I'm like, yeah, I'm out, bro. I like the code part. This is one of the reasons I like Vim. Like these are manual text manipulation moments and movements, and I enjoy doing them. It's like saying, hey, you can play Street Fighter 2, but you could also just have a robot playing it for you and you could watch. Yeah, no, I want to fucking move the joystick, man. If I'm not making a Hadouken myself just timed right, like what's the point? If I just have someone else playing for me, what's the point? Then the point is just the outcome. And that brings us back to my origin story of programming. I have basically 2 phases of my programming life. One that was just focused on outcomes. I wanted programs, and whatever the fuck I had to do to get that, I would do that. And then I had the second phase, post-Ruby, where I enjoyed making programs, like for its own sake. I'm still in that phase. I'm not fucking handing that over to AI. That's the part I enjoy the most, to some extent. Like, I want to do the typing. I want to do the fucking combo moves. I want to feel like I'm the one who's in charge here. And maybe there's some nostalgia here, and that's totally fine too. Again, maybe like I'll tell the story in like 5 years when AI has taken over everything. Like I got to program while we still had to do it manually. And great, amazing. Like I'd also like to still have a horse if I was into horses, even though there were cars around, right? I can accept that progress may render what I do either irrelevant or just not the vanguard of economic activity. Like it can stop being a profitable economic activity for me to pull off sick Vim combos. Like I can accept that, right? That might not be something that the market wants to pay me to do anymore. I'm still gonna fucking do it. Like, why do you think people are still programming that Commodore 64 1 megahertz machine? Because they're trying to, no, because they enjoy doing it. Because they enjoy the challenge. They have a meaningful obstacle in their way. And I want that meaningful obstacle. And it's not fucking prompt engineering. It's not. Now, the other thing is, this might not work. I know there's literally like fucking 5 trillion pouring into AI. And some very impressive shit has come out of it. But it may also not work. Like we may literally never get to the promised land. We don't even understand how the current AI works. Like I've listened to a bunch of interviews from all the fucking smart people who are working on this, and like half the time they're like, yeah, like there's a -1 here and it connects to the +1 there, and like I don't fucking know why that produces a new version of Shakespeare, but like that's just what it does. So we are a little bit in this magical space where we just don't know. There are a bunch of people who are totally convinced in much the same way that Elon Musk, I'm sure, very genuinely believed in the middle of 2017 that by the end of the year, people's Model S's would just be driving around and, well, just going to turn up the light here, would drive around and make them money. That didn't happen, but maybe it will next year. It's possible, right? I remember, I've given this example many times. I remember watching The Lawnmower Man. I don't know if either of you two will watch that. The Lawnmower Man was a sort of a B movie about virtual reality that came out in 1995. It was total shitty movie. But holy shit, the image of floating around in VR as being an avatar and you have the gloves on and you have the mask. I was like, this is fucking amazing. Like in 5 minutes, this is going to be how I'm living. I'm going to be inside this thing. I'm going to be an avatar. I'm going to be, and then literally 20 years later, Zuckerberg plows in 40 billion into that. Like, that's going to happen. It's going to happen. And like, what, 5 people and a dog showed up? Like, no one wanted that to happen. VR has literally not happened. There's a bunch of people playing Beat Saber, and that's fun. But like this Lawnmower Man reality of us all floating around in VR, no one wanted that. I don't want to fucking look at your weird ass Uncanny Valley Apple ski mask avatar thing that like correctly simulates the moving of my eyebrow. I'm like, no. And so does no one else. That fucking thing bombed harder than, let me not make a parallel. It bombed, right? Now, again, lots of things bomb, and then you give him 5 years, then you give him 10 years, and it works. You just don't fucking know. You don't know. You can't tell because no one knows anything. No one can predict like what's gonna happen, what's gonna be reality. That's what I find so wonderful about AI. It has such bright promise that is actually obvious to almost anyone who uses it. Like, I've not found yet a person who've actually used AI who weren't at least slightly impressed. We can make computers do that. Sick. But also, is it going to rewrite society? Maybe. For as long as I can, I'm going to write manual code. I'm going to fucking pull up my Vim combos and I'm going to tweet about how excited I am for discovering a new one. And I'm going to just enjoy that. And maybe there's 5 years left of that. Okay, great. I will enjoy those last 5 years. Actually, it won't even just be the next 5 years because I'll also do the 5 years after that, right? And the other 40. I will continue to write programming just because I really like it. Just like I continue to play fucking Street Fighter with my kids because it's fun, even though a bot could do it better than I could.
That is so dang good. And a lot of that mirrors kind of my similar feelings, which is a lot of the reasons why I program is because I want to program. I like the experience. And there's, it doesn't happen as often these days just because I'm not saying I happen to know everything, but I just know so much that when I see a problem, I can see how it should just generally be outlined. And so I can just kind of start flying on the keyboard and start doing it. But every now and then you like see something from a new perspective like that, almost like you get like forced epiphany, just like land on you. You're just like, oh, that is so incredible. Oh my gosh. Because that's like the thing that got me more excited than anything else in programming was learning how linked lists work. The fact that a linked list could reference itself and you could just see it shoot out into memory. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like that's really neat. Like, oh my gosh, this is the neatest thing I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I still remember that as being probably the most consequential moment in all of programming. And it's really the reason why I've continued to keep doing it. And I do see from the top shelf, people are asking, what is kind of like, do you have that consequential moment that made you turn from like, oh, I like programming into like, whoa, like kind of hit with that epiphany or some moment that's like, I will do this now from here on out?
Oh, it's crystal clear. Discovering metaprogramming in Ruby. Discovering how I could make active record. For those who don't know, I'll type it out literally through my mouth because it's so simple. Class, person, and, or less than, active record base. All right, now we declared our class.
Previous stream stopped, brother. Due to power outage, previous stream actually stopped, and I had to open a new one.
Next line has underscore many space colon comments end. Like that's a class. Like that's an active record class that has a one-to-many relationship with another class called comments, and it'll wire it all up with the database so you can pull it straight out. Holy shitballs. When I found out like that I could do that I could write DSLs, that I could write these domain-specific languages, and like I would just, I'm imagining in my head, this is what's so great about nostalgia from 10, 20 years ago. You can just rewrite it such that the movie gets better. Like I'm imagining.
No, brother, you have to learn JavaScript first. TypeScript is like the superset of JavaScript, so it's built on top of JavaScript. So if you don't know JavaScript, you won't get TypeScript. Like TypeScript was built just to have type safety in JavaScript. You have to learn JavaScript first.
Like by putting up my hands, looking at the hands, I did this, right? Like just that sense of power that like this doesn't even look like a program. Like how is this? How am I doing this? And then thinking, do you know what? I could build a whole framework that's just like this all the time, where we're just flowing through things through metaprogramming. So finding that metaprogramming in Ruby was probably, if I was to pinpoint one tipping point, that was it. That I could do that myself. That it wasn't something a language designer had to do. It wasn't something that Gosling had to put into Java to allow me, the little peon, to be able to do it. No, I could write at the same level of expression as fucking Mats, who designed the language. You could not tell apart that class statement from my has many statement. They both just looked like they were keywords. Holy shit. I was hooked.
I had a similar thing. Like it's kind of meta programming, but like with a space in between instead of the concept. Where I found out when I was in college that like this new NeoVim project was coming out, and I was blown away that people could like write code, and it could change what happened in their editor, right? So I was like writing code to change how I programmed, and I was like, this is awesome. Like my only experience before this was like Eclipse, you know, in the computer lab, right? Like I grew up no one in my family knew computers, anything like this, right? So it's like, oh, I guess programming's always just an Eclipse, and like sometimes it just crashes, you know? And you're like, oh my goodness, wait, I can take all the skills that I know about writing software to solve problems, and I can just solve my own problems. And I was like, mind blown. I am in love.
It's incredible. And I think that is that dopamine tipping point that I try to find as many invitations as I possibly can to stick them into Ruby on Rails. Just so people can find that like golden Willy Wonka ticket in like 500 different places. And there's an unlimited number of golden tickets. An unlimited number of tickets where if you find the one and you get the aha moment and you get the dopamine hit, you're going to be in. You're going to be hooked, right? Like, because I kind of was, I don't know if I was bummed. That's not true. I like everything the way it has happened. Amor fati. I don't want anything different. But I recognize that I was programming for literally like at least 2 years, maybe 3 years before that moment. And that was a very different type of programming. It was not this stuff we're talking about here. So I'd be like, do you know what? It would have been nice to have that happen in the first week. What can we do so some more programmers in their first week or first month or first quarter get a Willy Wonka ticket to exactly what the three of us are talking about? That experience of like, holy shit, I have the magic in my fingers and I can make the silicon dance to my liking. That is an incredible, addictive sense of power that sends most people, I think, who've experienced it down this rabbit hole of expertise and competence.
Speaking of dopamine hits, someone asks, user Sus, of course, in Prime's Discord, but how did you get into racing and like why racing?
Good question. I always liked racing video games. The one that stands out most to me is actually on the Dreamcast called Metropolitan Street Racer. I think it's from 1999. That was the first racing game that to me felt close enough to the idea I had in my head of what real driving was like and developing the expertise of sliding a car into one. Now, what's funny is it literally took me 6 more years to get a driver's license. I grew up in Copenhagen, Denmark. I did not have a car or a driver's license until I was 25. I got around the city on literal fucking rollerblades. I kid you not. That was my main mode of transportation growing up. I would rollerblade to high school and so forth. It was just a great way to get around a very walkable city, small city. You didn't need a car. Anyway, at 25, I get a driver's license because I wanted to travel to the US. And I'd heard like, you're kind of screwed if you get to the US and you don't know how to drive a car. You're not going to get very far. So I get my driver's license, and then I ended up moving to the US as part of joining 37 Signals just like 7 months later or something like that. Got my first car, an Audi S4, which was this amazing experience. I landed, and then Jason, my business partner, was like, all right, you got to get a car. And I was like, okay, cool, let's go to the dealership. And from Denmark, I like had picked out this very sensible Audi S3, which is this hatchback, or not S3, A3. hatchback, sensible thing that could go to grocery store, whatever. We go there. I drive this car, and literally in that moment, I decide to spend my entire life savings. At that time, we were already making a little bit of money. I think I had like, I don't know. I think I literally had like $40,000 in the bank, and like I just blew all of it on that Audi S4. So there were like literally almost $0 left in the bank. I just bought it outright, and that was a fun experience, which also resulted in me learning just a few days later that like there's cops on the interstate, and like they will actually pull you over if you. So not only did I get the experience with like American car culture quite quickly, I also got the experience with American highway patrol quite quickly. And I was like, this is like being in a fucking movie. I got this guy walking up at the side of the car, like his hand on his gun. And I got this other guy in my rearview mirror who also has his sign of the gun. There's like sirens off. And I'm like halfway scared to death, halfway super excited. Like I'm in a fucking movie. What's going to happen? I just ended up getting a ticket. So it was, anyway, that was a lot of fun. And then 2 years later, a friend of mine took me to a racetrack. I literally just had my driver's license for 2 years. It took me to a racetrack. I sat in a real race car, like a Formula Mazda from early 90s, I think, which a manual shifter, single seater, all the stuff. It looked like a miniature Formula One car. And I go out on the track and I drive that around. And I come back in and I remember actually not being able to articulate. Like it was like if someone had like overclocked my CPU by like 3 times and then tried to like bolt on some cooling just to keep it together for long enough that I like wouldn't crash and just to come in. And I just went in and I was like, that was cool. Like, yeah, no, that is an understatement of that was cool. That was fucking mind blowing to drive a car on a racetrack, a proper race car. And then I really got into it. I spent every weekend for the next couple of years on just getting better at it, being at the track. And then towards end of the 2009 or whatever, Rails or Basecamp was doing well enough that I could do some of this stuff more seriously. I was like, do you know what? What's the biggest fucking race? What is the biggest fucking race I want to go to? Let's just set that the bar. And I was like, 24 Hours of Le Mans. The 24 Hours of Le Mans, which is this famous motor race in France that's been going for literally 100 years. I'm like, I want to do that. And then it became a mission. How do I get there as quickly as possible? So I just sort of got into that. Anyway, what's interesting for programmers to me is that there's so many similarities. You can think of a track as a clock cycle. Like you have one clock cycle around the track, right? And if you can optimize that, if you can do sort of more work, do more of the right thing, you go faster and you get immediate feedback. It's like doing micro benchmark optimizing, which can be quite fun, where you go like, oh, I just did another thing in that turn 11. I went 2/10 quicker. Let's try that again. Can I replicate that? Can I do more of that? How much do I have to do to get all the way down there? So that's fun. That's on an individual level. Then you zoom out to the team level, and it's like a miniature company. Like at the kind of racing that I do, this company comes together at the start of a season. All of a sudden, there's like 25 people who kind of have to figure each other out and like who's full of shit and who knows their stuff and who do we need to replace? Like, all this stuff, right? It's like doing a startup, but if you just compressed it down to like 6 months until the IPO, right? Like you have the whole thing. It's got to happen in 6 months. Not a lot of time. It's a really fascinating way to get to know people and quickly suss out competence and all that stuff. So I draw a ton of parallels. I try to move a bunch of things I've learned about programming and running a business into the racing world, and I take a bunch of it back out again. And then it's also just hella fun. I mean, I picked that example of the 3 Gs for a reason. You should try that once in your life. Like, it doesn't have to be you driving the car at 3 Gs, but you should drive in a car where you're pulling over 2 Gs. That's really the magic point for me. You can, in a street car, like a Tesla Model S, whatever, can accelerate in literally 1.1 G. And it feels crazy. It feels like sickening. A roller coaster, in some ways, you can get some Gs to be in a fucking race car. Sit with your goddamn helmet on. Feel that suddenly your head is 3 times heavier than what it was before, and that you can't hold it up because you don't have enough neck muscles. That's amazing. One of those peak life experiences I can highly recommend.
I've never heard someone recommend having your neck actually crashed by gravity. Like you can only have an artificial hold up to keep it. Like, I would die. I'd be dead if this didn't happen.
That's why it's fun. Actually, that's a great point. Do you know what? It is the spice is that if you don't do it right, it's at least going to be expensive. It may very well hurt, and you could legitimately die. Now, I don't want to die, but I want to know that I could, like as a somewhat remote option, because that brings in just enough to like, I'm alive, right? Like there's just enough of like the taste of it. And I've had some crashes that weren't great. Most of them have just been expensive, not that painful. But I've also seen it go wrong. And again, that's not a glorification of death per se. Like there's a bunch of things. I think those squirrel suits, you know, there's one where they jump
Yeah.
off a cliff. That looks like the most amazing thing ever that I would absolutely goddamn love to do. But the mortality rate is 1 in 10. Yeah, no, I can't take those odds. Like literally 1 out of 10 who do the squirrel thing on a regular basis crash into a mountain and they die. That's how racing used to be. If you were a Formula One racer in the 60s, I think the mortality rate in the 60s was 17% or something. Like 17% of the people who started the grid didn't make it to the end of the year because you crashed one of those old cars and it burst into a ball of flames and you were going to die or at least get disfigured. No, no, thank you. I like just a little bit. It's kind of like a seasoning, right? Like you can have a bland meal and like I like a little bit of sriracha on it. Don't fucking jam in a goddamn whole chili pepper. That's gonna spoil it for me. Too much, but a little bit of spice. And race car driving has just enough of that where you go like, I'm in contact with something that is 5 steps removed from the saber tooth, but like I can squint and imagine that there's a little bit there that like I actually do have to run, otherwise I will get eaten. I like that. That's good.
That was so good. I like this idea of just a little bit of death, just a sprinkling, spritzing, really. All right, so I have a great question, and I know our time is running to an end, so you can answer this one pretty quickly. And I think this is a good one and some good advice you can give to a lot of people, because I know a good 20%ish of the audience is in that new grad to just trying to get hired phase. And so what do you see as the biggest problem, or what's the biggest problem you see with new hires in programming right now?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, before you even get to that step, if you're applying to a lot of openings and you're using AI to write those cover letters and whatever, realize that so are a bunch of other idiots. And what someone who receives a lot of those see is all of it. And it smells the same and it looks the same. I can tell when
Certainly.
the AI wrote your thing because it uses the same phrases and the same setup as all the other ones. So you look like you look very smart when you think you're just looking at your cover letter, right? You wrote whatever version you wrote, and then AI made it better. Well, realize that when I receive it, there's another fucking 50 people who did the same thing, and it looks like slob. Even though it looks better, it's slob. So that doesn't work. I would highly discourage that. Maybe AI is going to be amazing tomorrow and can do it in a way where I can't even tell. Entirely possible. Today, no. So don't do that. That would be step one. The other step would be just get involved with something, anything. When you're hiring when I'm hiring a junior programmer, you're not hiring on accomplishments. You're hiring on promise. And you need to see the sparkle somewhere. Somewhere there's got to be a sparkle. Sometimes that is a pull request to an open source thing. Sometimes it's a thing you did on your own. Sometimes it's a cheat sheet that's very nicely formulated. Sometimes it's something, right? Like it's very hard to actually quantify because exactly the problem is you can't look at track record. That's juniors don't have track record, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be juniors. So you have to look at the sparkle. So you got to find, I mean, that's very fucking vague. Is that even actionable? I don't even know if it is. Actually, let me put it a different way. Commit to becoming good. Commit to be not the fucking dog that doesn't know shit. Commit to like, I will figure things out and it'll take me a long time in the beginning, but I will drill down and I'll figure it out. That will be the one thing I will say from actually having hired some juniors, wherever the sparkle was, what to me made them stick and us thinking it was a good hire were people who were willing to do that. Like they didn't know everything. Again, that's why they're juniors, but they were willing to find out. They were willing to peel back the onion until they got to the part that was brown, until they got to the part that didn't work and needed to be cut out. That I think is actually something that may atrophy with AI. And again, maybe we're worried about fucking bicycles because it turns, what was it? It turns young people crazy. That was one of the things about bicycles. Or books are dangerous because, like, I've been through multiple rounds of this, right? So be a little self-aware there. But just don't give up on this thing. You're going to figure things out. And try to reflect that. I think actually bug reports is another good way. Even if you can't fix the issue you're finding in open source piece of software, I can see a lot of sparkle in a great bug report. Someone who could reduce the issue that they found into the smallest reproducible element of that. That's more about thinking. That's more about your analytical process. Doesn't rely on track record, doesn't rely on super expertise in some particular framework. So find a way to exhibit that quality, and then just be good. This is, I get this all the time. So for the last hiring round we did, we got 1,500 applications, right? And we had to reject most of them. Obviously, that's how it works when you get 15. We can't hire 1,500 people. We're 60. We can't hire 1,500 people. And a lot of people wanted to know why, right? Why did I not progress? Well, first of all, just think about the mechanic. Like, that's actually a trick question in itself. Anyone who asks, like, why can't I get a detailed response from you as to why I didn't progress, haven't done the basic math of thinking 1,500 people times 5 minutes is 7,500 minutes is 3 fucking weeks of nonstop 8 hours a day writing feedback to all applicants back. No, that was a hiring question, and you just failed that one. But even beyond that, I can't tell you. I can just tell you that the best person progressed. You just got to be good. And this is such a frustrating answer, because you're like, well, then I want to be good. Yeah, okay, then you got to be competent. Oh, well, how do I become competent? Well, let me show you. Here's a 10-year career path to discovering that. But there's no shortcuts. And I think this is often what's behind the question. People looking for a shortcut. How can I, like, not do any work but still get the job? Yeah, that's going to be hard, buddy.
Dang, that's real. Man, I can't tell you, like,
but
I've had this problem where it's like, I want to produce things, and I think a lot of people feel this exact same thing. I think this is where a lot of people are putting a bunch of bank on AI, which is there's 2 forms of operation. There's one, the operation of learning the thing for the sake of learning the thing. And there's the second operation of building something to get it out there for people to use. And often they can come highly tensioned, as we all know, that sometimes you just have to get the thing out there without learning about it. And luckily in my older years, I've had more time of spending learning and all that. But in my younger years, it was all about producing the thing. And I feel like this is such a hard balance. And how do you convince people where to kind of put that? Because I do think building something just to understand is worth a ton, and it can do wonders for your career. But in the immediate, it's really not beneficial. It's, like, no one's sitting there going, oh, wow, I can't believe you know how HTTP 1.1 works, right? Like, no one's going to pat you on the back for that. But it can be that one little thing that you start talking about in an interview that completely changes their perception of you. And it's so funny, like, how do you convince people that this type of thinking is actually maybe longer term the better kind of thinking?
It's difficult, and sometimes I think you need to just get some hard knocks of life, or some rejections and whatever, to realize that whatever strategy you're on isn't working and you should change. This is one of the things I've seen. For example, we require cover letters, and we require cover letters that are about this job at our company, which requires you to actually write something specific to this opening. And I've heard some pushback on that is like, yeah, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on your job opening. I have to apply to 100 jobs to what? What? You're going to put even less effort into even more jobs? Yeah, how's that going to work out? It's not going to work out, right? So sometimes the cynicism seeps in because you've had some experiences you think are bad experiences. You've applied to 20 jobs and you didn't get a call back. You didn't get okay, yeah, that fucking happens. It does. It's not going to get better by you putting in less effort, by doing less presentation to be competent and sparkling, right? Like, there's going to be less of that to happen. And again, it is one of those hard things where it's not actionable because there's not a trick. I can't tell you the one thing to do. You got to be smart, and you got to get things done. That gets to your point, right? There are smart people who don't get things done. Do you know what? They're also not that useful for commercial software building. But there are also people who get things done and who aren't that smart or who aren't applying techniques or who don't understand things. Do you know what? Maybe that works in some scenarios. It doesn't work at our company. Like I have to look at your code, perhaps probably after you're gone. I've been here since day one, and I will probably be here after you're gone. And I have to look at the code. I have to go back and look at it. So I'm only going to hire people whose code I want to look at again in 5 years, right? Again, it doesn't have to be that they write perfect code, but they're on a trajectory that at least have the aspirations of writing beautiful, nice code that I could want to maintain in 10 years. That includes myself. I try to hold myself to all these standards that I ask of others. But yeah, there's no trick. And that's really disappointing because wouldn't it be nice if there was? But that's just not how it works. You got to be good, and you got to be on a trajectory of good. You got to show some sparkle, and that's about as specific as it gets. Unfortunately.
Yeah, just to echo what you said, for me, getting my first like remote job before I was like known in open source and some other stuff like this was primarily because I was volunteering on Friday nights, and like I had a fun story that talked about that, and that was how I got through the inundation of like online resumes. Was I wrote a particular cover letter that matched with the values of the company. I gave them specific, actionable, real life examples of what I did to do, like that I was living out those same things. And then they gave this random guy from the Midwest a call to interview. And then one thing led to the other, and I got my first remote job. So I definitely want to echo like there's other things you can do. Make yourself an individual, not just like you're saying, a ChatGPT rapper. Don't be a ChatGPT rapper. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to like plug.
I do want to bring one point because I just said there's no cheat codes, and I don't actually think that's true. I do think open source is a cheat code.
Yeah.
I do think open source is a cheat code. And that doesn't mean that everyone has to have, we have a lot of programmers who don't have a long, whatever, CV of open source contributions. It's not a requirement, but it is a cheat code. If you're junior and you're able to do something in open source that I can see prior, you absolutely have a leg up. You absolutely have an advantage, because the thing with junior, again, is that you can't look at a large sort of CV that has all these prestigious placements. You can look at some code. And this relates to my own experience of wanting to fail math in high school. The reason I wanted to fail math in high school was not because I wanted to fail math. I actually kind of like math. I'm not that great at it, but like I do like it. It was, I wanted to spend my time on different things. I spent my time working on the internet. I spent my time building gaming websites and all these other things. So I think sometimes people who are perhaps in college or whatever, they think like they have their coursework. That's important. But also, you could also get a cheat code, a leg up by doing some open source. And even if it means failing a couple of classes, I don't fucking look at any grades when I hire people. Maybe they do other places, and that's not universal advice. But I will look at open source contributions before virtually everything else. Again, doesn't mean it's a requirement. It just means it's a cheat code. You can absolutely get ahead of the line by having some great open source out there where people can review exactly your lines of code and contribution.
Yeah, it also helps you learn how to work with people and communicate and a bunch of other stuff. I learned a lot from that, so I'll also echo that. But I think we're just about at the end of our time. DHH, thank you for being here. Anything you'd like to plug? I know there's some maybe Rails things happening, or anything else you'd like to sort of give as a last shout out. We really appreciate you taking the time to come chat with us.
Yeah, no, this has been really fun. I really enjoyed it, especially the whole thing about kids as well. I think it's always fun to pull some of those things. Plugging things, I mean, I am assuming that all your chat folks are already Linux geeks, but if they're not, I'd actually say that is, I don't know if it's a cheat code. It is a nice or workaround to understanding servers better, is to run Linux on your own laptop. So if you aren't already doing that, and again, I wrote a blog post in 2005. That was one of my early controversies. And the controversy was I said I wouldn't hire a Windows person. Because at the time, I was like, you know what? Windows is so far removed from this open source ecosystem that I'm in. I can't see how someone who's in there is going to do well. I think that was misjudged. And I've worked with plenty of people who started out on Windows and whatever. But all that said, like right now, do you know what the vanilla AI wrapper of computing is in web circles? It's having a Mac. And again, that's not something bad about the Mac. It's just like, that is not a differentiating experience. Do you know what is a differentiating experience if you run Linux? And that's just a virtue of it being the path less taken. Like you can get a leg up, you can show others that you're willing to do things that is not as common. It is harder, perhaps, than it would be elsewhere. So I would actually recommend that. I mean, this is coming with all the credibility of a newly formed vegan. Like, oh, I just turned to veganism. Let me tell you all about why you shouldn't eat animals for the next 2 years. I have some of that in me since switching to Linux full time is still relatively recent. But yeah, I would encourage that. I have my own project for that. That's Omakub, omakub.org for that. But otherwise,
I've
links
linked
to
the
all my
tweet.
stuff is on dhh.dk. And we're going to do Rails World next week. And I'm going to talk about a lot of the things that we talked about today, no build and other things, deployment. Cloud, we didn't even touch on cloud. It's going to be a lot of that in next week's keynote, and Rails 8, which we're going to push out. So that's all the plugs I can fit in.
I actually wanted to talk more about NeoVim and more about the cloud because that one is very, very interesting. But alas, time
Glad to have you back.
Yeah. Anytime you want to come back, you want to talk about those things, plug those things, let us know.
Yeah, and I would be remiss if we didn't say we talked about how it was really important to have kids. So if you're exploring Linux, do not use Arch Linux. Try a different kind of operating system so that you're still able to pursue sort of both avenues at the same time. I just wanted to make sure that's out there as a closing word. Thanks, thanks, DHH.
It is Fathers Against Arch Linux. Foul, right?
All right, see everybody. Thank you.
Later.
Thank you. Thanks, DHH. That was awesome.
So this tweet is nuts, man. It's actually pretty Did you see my response on it?
I did see your response. So I actually haven't read it. Right when I saw this and I saw yours, I was like, oh, this is like a great one to read through because I did read yours because you. Okay, so hold on. Do you want to read it or would you like me to read yours? Yours is just mind blowing.
Yeah, I'll read mine. I've told this story before too, but basically, just so you guys have context, there is a person who said that they had a very rough time at Blizzard, and explained all of that with their entire story, and it's a massive story. If we look at this, it's like just a bajillion posts long, like outrageous amount of stuff, right? So what I did is I responded with one of my own stories, and I'll read this off here. So I said, working at Blizzard was easily some of the best and worst experiences I've ever had anywhere during my career so far. And I worked there for 7 years, for context, from 2009 to 2016. And I grew up there as well. My dad actually worked there for 23 years as a cinematic director. So I have been with Blizzard since the beginning, since it was Silicon and Synapse, and then Chaos Studios, and then Blizzard Entertainment. So I've been there since the beginning, right?
Can I interrupt for one quick second? Yeah. So as it became Blizzard, and this is like Warcraft 1 to Warcraft 2 phase, right in there. there was such motivation for me to learn programming because of how much I looked up to Blizzard. So like
I understand.
during those days, like it's like just even you saying these things, it gives me goosebumps because like you lived the life I wanted to live. And then when I read this, it's shocking. So keep going. Sorry, I just wanted to like
Yeah.
put that in the minds of everybody who grew up in the '90s. Blizzard was like the place if you were gonna go as a programmer. It was the place.
Not all that glitters is gold, man. And I think that's the part that really sucks here. You know, so I said a number of the issues you've described here are not unique, which is the real nightmare in response to his negative story. And I said, when I was on night crew in QA, which was my first job at Blizzard in 2009, as that's where I started night crew QA, and we worked all night and then I slept during the day. I was paid $10.50 an hour when starting, which the starting rate for a grocery bagger at Trader Joe's at the time was $12 an hour. So in Southern California, you can't live off of that, right? You can barely even rent a room.
For those
So
that
I
don't
was-
know what Southern California is, just so like a little context, what was 2009 rent for a studio? $1,500?
Yeah, something like
18?
that. I couldn't
Yeah.
afford that. I lived out of a room, and then eventually I lived out of a room from a lady that basically made halfway houses for younger people that couldn't afford to live anywhere else, and she
Halfway
had converted.
houses, for people that don't know, is people who are usually getting off
Yeah.
drinking and trying to
Yeah.
reassimilate into working life.
And she did that specifically for younger people that just could not make enough to live in California was the problem. And she
Jeez.
was able to do that kind of thing for me, which is great. And I had another buddy who I met through there, and then like I think there was like 6 of us living in that house because it was a converted old folks home that she had bought and then did that, which was awesome.
Wow.
So that's how I survived, right? So the grocery bagger at Trader Joe's started at $12 an hour. I said, this isn't possible to live on in Southern California. It makes no sense for one of the largest gaming companies in the world. One day during our shift, we were told a critical task had come in and we all needed to be on it immediately. The task sheet was a piece of paper and they handed it out to all of us and it had like 30 or so steps on it. We were told to read the entire thing and then perform the task. So I read through it and like about halfway through in the middle of the task, it said, turn off your computer, get up from your desk, leave this behind, leave the room. And I read the rest of the task to make sure that there wasn't anything more because it said read the entire task, and I left the room. The last 2 people who left the room got fired. The rest of us went to day crew. They were dissolving the team. That's how they lost their jobs because they took the longest to get to that point in the test. That was it.
Oh my god! So I didn't even read that. Oh, I like misread that. I didn't realize it was a race to whoever just left the room for or last.
Yep.
Oh,
And
oh my
the way that
goodness.
the way that they posed that was those are the people that don't know how to read tasks. So you're going to day crew. Everybody else is getting fired, and that was it. And
Imagine
when I went
getting
to-
fired for
yeah.
being meticulous like that
Yep.
as a QA. Like that's
It's even worse too because after I went to day crew, they didn't even talk to me about like the pay increases or anything like that. They're like, "Hey, you're going to day crew now," and I noticed my next paycheck was smaller, and I was like, "What the hell's going on?" And they said, "Oh, yeah, you lost 50 cents an hour. That was a night crew differential." That was it. I just lost
Damn.
$1,000 a year because I went to day crew, and that was it. You know,
And during that time, 50 cents, like, I mean, if you're going from 10.50 to 10, like, that's a meaningful difference.
yeah,
That's
it's
the difference between getting an
$1,000 a year.
egg in your ramen or just ramen. Like, that's like real difference.
Yeah, no, it was horrible. It was probably the worst experience I had in my life, but I was too young to realize that that was like really not okay, right? I didn't learn that until
Yeah.
much later because this was my first big job. I had been working freelance before this, so I was used to kind of shitty environments. I was like, okay, I guess this is just how this works. And I didn't realize that this is wrong until I think halfway through StarCraft 2. We had our manager, like our lead of QA, our director came down. And morale was really low because we had been on StarCraft 2 for over a year at that point of overtime. And we ended up doing 2 years of overtime because the team had this weird, the lead of the team had this weird idea that QA could get ahead of development. So we just worked crazy hours on shit that was not ready for test. It made no sense, right?
Hold on, can you just like give me like what's
Yeah.
a 3-sentence argument for how QA can get ahead of development? Can you just like
None.
throw that out
There's
for me?
none. There's none at all. They never had an argument. They're like, yeah, we're getting ahead of development. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. They're like, we're doing it. And I was like, but
What are we testing if we're ahead of them?
so we would end up testing stuff that just wasn't ready and then punting it back to dev. And then dev would be like, why did you test this? And then punting it back to us when it was ready to test. And we just kept doing it. We're just spinning our wheels doing nothing. It made no sense. So
That
like,
sounds so emotionally painful, testing
was
things
awful.
that are already like pre-known to be broken.
yep, it was awful. And so while this was going on, morale just shot through the floor. People were losing their minds. Actually, I watched a couple of people get divorced on that team because they weren't home all the time with their spouses. And like, it started to collapse, right? People's morale went nuts because it was over a year. So after this happened, our director had to come down to like rally the troops, right? And he comes down, and we're all sitting in front of him in chairs, and he's trying to give a speech to everything. And halfway through the speech, he stops and he says, "But I want to let you know that you're not the rock stars, that the devs are rock stars, and any of you could be replaced at any time." In the middle of this morale boost speech. This was the first time I'd met the director for our department. And I'll never forget that shit, because my lead, because I was on the editor team in QA, my lead got up and walked away, and he motioned for us to leave too, and then everyone started to leave. They bailed on him in the middle of his speech. And he was like, "Well, what's going on? What did I do wrong?" And HR got so many complaints that he had to come back and apologize. And during his apology, he said it again. That was the second time I got to meet him. And it was just, it really set the stage for me to be like, wow, QA is really treated like shit, right? Like I'm not treated like a person here. And I did everything I could at that point to leave the department. And over the next 4 years, I eventually got my chance, and I actually gave a document to Ali Vitani to build, he was the director of Battle.net at the time, to build a application security team for all of Blizzard's websites globally. And I got that job. They made the team, and I became the lead of application security. And there's my Battle.net coin, man.
So, can we roll that back just a quick second on that last one? Because you do say, because we've had this, like, we've had a brief discussion in the past, a couple of these like online banters about QA being considered engineering or not. Is this really like the turning point where you feel like QA has to be treated like engineering, because, or else, I mean, that however inhumane that was like the turning point?
I'll give you an example of why they should be, right? I am a special exception. I have a lot of skills for things that general QA normally wouldn't do. But as an example, I saved 30,000 hours of tester time on Diablo 3 console because I built custom hardware to allow us to do automation on the console itself. It was a bridge from the PC to the console that mimicked inputs, the controller inputs, and they wouldn't allow me to use anything, so I had to use AutoIt to do it. But I actually wrote custom firmware to get that done in the first place and built the devices myself out of parts that I bought from China. So I still have those. They're called Bifrost because it's a bridge. So think about that on, I think at that time it was about $11 an hour, right? And they didn't even reimburse me for the parts, so I still got the damn things. So you look at something like that and you see, okay, yeah, let's just treat them like monkeys with keyboards. Let's pay them an unlivable wage. That doesn't make any goddamn sense. Now, I'm the exception there. Not everybody was able to do those types of things. But you have people that are so knowledgeable about the games. They know absolutely everything ins and outs for it to be able to test these types of things and report these critical issues and discern what is actually going on so the other development side can actually fix this. So yeah, QA is dev. And the best thing that I ever saw was when they started doing embedded QA, which I saw for Overwatch 1. Yeah. Overwatch 1 was phenomenal for that because they had a development team and they had an embedded QA team, and they were efficient as shit because of it. It was awesome. It was great to see. And I had hoped that would spread out to the rest of the business, but it didn't. And a lot of it came down to fears that QA would, God, what was the term? It was like a fraternize with the enemy kind of thing. Like they're going to abandon ship and join development and all this. It was this weird military brochacho shit that made no sense. It was really, really strange. And I will never understand.
Fraternize or whatever.
Yeah,
that's the strangest word to describe
making
really a product good.
It was really, really weird, and it pissed me off like you wouldn't believe. And like outside of that, there were also things like QA generally looks down on, right? Like people look down on them. And at the time when I first started Blizzard, we had different colored badges for different teams. So Night Crew, we had brown badges. QA had yellow badges, and everyone's like, "Oh, I got to get a yellow badge because it's like a status thing. If you don't have a yellow badge, you're just like kind of worthless." And I remember talking to a guy who had a blue badge, which was development side, and he was talking to me. He was really interested in my ideas, and then I saw him look down, look at my yellow badge, and disconnect the conversation. And that happened a lot, dude. And it was literally just like this weird kind of like class-based badge environment. And to Blizzard's credit, they eventually did away with the different colored badges because it became very toxic. That kind of environment became super toxic, you know?
It's like a Brave New World almost. You're the beta class, and this is the alpha class, and you're just forever a beta because of it.
Yep. And they eventually got rid of that system. They switched over to blue badges, but I had to live through that, right? And I know a lot of other people did too. And that stuff sucks, man. Like that stuff sticks with you. And it stuck with me, and it's the reason that I run my indie studio in the way that I do, is to make sure that this kind of shit never happens to the people who work for me, ever. And I have kept to that every single step of the way.
So let me ask you a question.
Just taught me what not to do, you know?
since you saw I mean, obviously you see everyone should see the value of QA, right? There's
Oh, yeah.
no amount of automation, blah, 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 that you can really replace QA with, right? It's very,
No,
very
no, no.
important to have that. But you obviously you were very technical to begin with. You were able to make these things, which a lot of people, even today, even in my chat, even in your chat, that are all developers, that would find it extremely difficult to do, building firmware, making these auto clicks, saving all this time. Do you make room? Do you allow paths? Do you encourage QA that you have today to also wear the mantle of a dev, but in the realm of automation?
They should.
Do you
yeah.
give them the working
Absolutely.
and space to do that?
Yeah, if I had more people on here, if I had a need of more of QA to do that, I would absolutely do it. There'd be no reason not to. Invest in those people, because I'll give you the best option for this. And this is gonna be kind of a weird call out. Amazon Game Studios was the best place I ever worked for anything related to that, because they have a really good structure for QA for Amazon Game Studios. So like at Blizzard, the way that it worked is you could become a QA, and then once you got to a certain part of your career, you had two options: become a manager or become a producer. There was no path forward for QA. If you were an amazing tester, you suddenly had to be a manager. You needed people skills. What if they don't have people skills? What if they're just a really good QA person? What if they're just amazing at testing and building test plans and doing that, right? There's no route. So you lose that asset into a role that they probably aren't going to be as good at, and also they have to do it because they want more pay. That doesn't make any sense. So Amazon Game Studios, they structured it differently for you could basically stay a QA your entire career. And those jobs ended out at like $250,000, man. Like they were not like small chump change kind of QA jobs. They were big deal QA jobs for that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was huge. So I saw that and I was like, what I realized then was, I don't want to work for a AAA game company. I want to work for a company that owns a AAA game company. Yes. And it showed me very quickly, like, this works because Amazon is a business and they own a game company. Yes. And that's my hope, was with the acquisition of Blizzard, that we'd see the same from Microsoft, because now they're under the same kind of situation. And their first action was to fire 1,900 people. And it just devastates me, dude. Like, because you're not going to get that talent back. A lot of the people that got fired, man, they're all over my Facebook. They're people that have been there 10 plus years. Buddies of mine that have been there like 13, 15 years got fired in that wave. Where are you going to get that talent back? You're not.
Yeah,
that kind
that's
of
such a brain drain that you can't redo. And the worst part is that Blizzard
never get it back. Yeah,
was magic 15 years ago. That was like in my head personally. That's where like the magic was coming to an end. As far as like my love for their games, it's kind of gone down since then. But it's just like you're losing that group with whom had the magic still.
Yeah. And it's so devastating, because I can understand, we look at it as a business, right? We look at it as a cost.
Yeah.
Games don't work that way. Games, you have a name of you bought a name, Microsoft. You bought a name. Yeah. And then you fired the reason that name was special. And that's not coming back, man. Like, you can't get it back. And that's why you see so many of these other studios. Like, if you look at, you remember when Hearthstone launched? Massive sensation, right? Did amazing.
Yeah.
Reason it was doing so well is Ben Brode was the game director for that game. He loves card games. He's so invested in that. He wanted it to be all as amazing as he possibly can. He built the best team for it. Awesome people that all love card games, right? When he left Blizzard, he went off to go make his own company called Second Dinner. Second Dinner's first game, Marvel Snap. That's why Marvel Snap exploded and did so well, because he loves card games. And now Hearthstone is in a state where a lot of people don't really enjoy it, right? And it shows very quickly that when that passion leaves, you still got the name, but you don't got the game. And that's
you saw that when they had the Diablo 4. They had the devs on there, and they couldn't even really play the game well. You could see that they're disconnected from it. And you can also see that with Elden Ring. Elden Ring is created by a guy who wanted to create a game that he would love. And that's it. Like that is Elden Ring, is the game he always wished he had. You know, technically it's Dark Souls, but go all the way back. But that's why those games do so well, is it's because it's created by someone who loves the thing itself. They're not there to make profit. They're there to make the thing they've always loved. And profit usually follows when you make a really good game, but there's magic there that you can't get back. Yeah.
There's three things that I always say pay off. Being passionate about the thing that you're working on, treating your community and your customers with respect, because they matter more than anything else. You support them, they're going to support you. And treating your employees the same. If you do those things, it's very hard to lose. It is incredibly difficult to lose. You still could, but it's much harder.
There's always a loser in life, no matter how well they're set up. But you're right. Like, if you have people bought in, you have customers that are excited, I don't see how you can lose. Honestly, it'd be
Yeah.
crazy for you to lose at that point.
It's difficult. Oh God, Bezos is here. The ad break. No.
Oh yeah. You usually take a little moment to do any sort of ad break. We can wait for a quick second and not
Yeah.
let anything.
Yeah,
Do you
you
want
see-
to read these tweets or read through this tweet line? Do you want to go through that
Yeah,
or?
sure.
Okay,
actually
because I don't
haven't
want to
read
interrupt
through
what
it.
you're doing. I didn't realize you were. I mean, I know you stream most
no,
these
you're
days. I just don't know which days you stream these days.
Yeah, you're good. We'll wait for the Bezos and then we'll go through it because I haven't read through all of this guy's stuff yet. I've read through a number of it. And I was like, this is rough, dude. Because like, I get it, and I saw it, and I experienced the same stuff. So I am
Yeah.
unsurprised.
I'm seeing this gay fake promotion, and then hearing you getting the old daytime shift, learning that you, quote unquote, got a time promotion, but then lost
Yep.
money.
Yeah, no, it's rough, man. And that wasn't the only bad experience I had there. It was enough that like, I eventually left, and I didn't want
Yeah.
to leave, even though I found out I was paid 36% of industry standard, even though, even though the conditions were terrible, I didn't want to leave. I had
Yeah.
to. And that's a very awful kind of a thing,
I do want to highlight one quick thing though that you said, which is really, really funny. In the dev world, one of the worst companies you can work at is Amazon.
Yeah.
Which
That's interesting.
I think goes to show how bad, at least this is my perception, I could be wrong, but how bad the gaming industry is that in the web dev world, the worst place you can go is Amazon, and your best experience was at Amazon.
Yeah. I
Like,
think
there's
so-
definitely a disconnect. It could be, how
There's a reason.
there's like a local vertical. Sometimes they're much better than like say the company at a whole. So that's like a real, that could happen, but it's also just funny that exists.
there's a reason for this, though. I got 8 seconds left on ads, and then I'll tell you.
Okay.
Waiting on it. All right, there we go. Bezos is receded. So yeah, the reason why I had such a good experience at Amazon Game Studio was actually because most of them were former Blizzard. A large amount of that team was. It was people. We joked it was Blizzard refugees, man. So a lot of people had left Blizzard because Amazon Game Studio is 4 minutes away. By car. It's like right there next to the Irvine campus.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a great change.
Yeah, so we all left and we got like way more money. But I remember the reason why I had such a good time is my boss was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And in the first month that I was there, I went to him and I was like, "Hey, I don't think I'm doing a good job. Like, I need to have a talk with you. I don't think that I'm, excelling in the things I'm doing. I don't think I'm doing very well." And he said, "Go home and take tomorrow off as well." It was Thursday. He said, "Take tomorrow off as well. You're going to get a 4-day weekend, and it's not coming out of your PTO." And I was like, "What's going on?" And he said, "You were so overworked at Blizzard that you don't know what it's like to work a normal job. You're not used to a normal human pace, so you think you're underperforming. You need to reset." And he was 100% right. And he knew because he was also former Blizzard. And it changed everything for me, man. Absolutely everything. It reset everything for me, and I was able to go back into the workforce and actually kick some ass and not worry about that because he was right. Dead right.
Dang.
Because it's an awful environment, man.
It's so wild to think about how much influence a good manager has and how hard it is to realize how much influence a bad manager has.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny that you would think they're both equally obvious, but it's clear they're not equally obvious.
No. It hit me really hard. And like, I think that kind of set me up for success there. And I was able to like go forward and be like, no, I'm doing good stuff. And I was able to focus on doing the work instead of doing the job, which is like, to me, a very different thing. The work and the job are generally very different. So yeah, no, it was great. It actually was awesome from there. I'm talking to Primogen, by the way. The Primogen. By the way, are you going to the Streamer Awards? You doing it?
Dude, did you not look at the seating arrangement?
I did look at the seating arrangement. I want to make sure you're showing up.
Yeah.
You know?
Who's rubbing shoulder to shoulder at the there?
You're gonna be able to see me shit my pants live, within 5 feet away.
Not even. I will be able to pat your back as you shat your pants. I'll be like, good job, you got this.
There's 2 ways that I shit my pants at the Streamer Awards. Either I win and I go up on stage, I trip, shit my pants, and cry. Right?
Yep.
That's one way. Or I don't win, but I'm standing up because I think I'm about to win, and the light goes over me to someone else, and then I shit my pants and cry while standing there. There's 2 ways that this happens, right? There's no other way around it, frankly.
The spotlight hits you, you stand up, and then it goes to Doug, and you're like, nah.
Oh, I
that'd be
I
the
was on
greatest.
Doug Stream the other day, and I messaged him on his chat, and I said, "I hope you win, so that I don't have to go on stage and shit my pants and cry."
Well,
Oh,
worst of luck to you. I wish you the worst then.
thank you, thank you. It's too
all
late.
right,
It's too late to unvote me. So it's if it
Yeah.
happens, it happens.
It happens. Well, I hope you prepare. You know what the best part about doing any of these kind of awards things is you have to go on stage. It has to look low effort, and you have to be funny and spontaneity. You know, a lot of spontaneity going on.
Yeah.
But you have to pre-plan all of that.
So,
So,
let's
good
let's
luck.
see this.
Good luck on
yeah,
that.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. It's gonna be great. I'm just gonna wing it. It's gonna
Yeah.
go up. If it happens, I'm just gonna wing it. Be like, "Hello, that'll happen, and then it'll be great."
At least
Be
you
a
have a
live
lot of
stream fail.
practice talking. You know, at least I mean, words will come
True.
out. Now, whether they're coherent and well thought through, probably not. But at least words will come out.
They will. It'll. I hope. I hope it's worse.
All right, shall we
Oh,
read this? Because I
yeah.
haven't read this yet. You want to read this?
Yeah, I'll read it. So he said,
okay.
so enough time has passed now for me to talk about why I decided to leave Blizzard. A mixed year with great teammates, but a management that mistreated, lied to me, gaslit me, gave me a fake promotion, and HR that refused to help. Buckle up, friendos. So this is going to be rough. Oh, by the way, that whole thing of there and HR that refused to help, HR is not there for you. HR is there to protect the company. Never forget that.
Is that true universally? Because that's been my
Yeah, dude.
experience universally. Has been HR is there to protect the company, never to
HR
help
is there
you.
to protect the company from you. That is how that works. Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
I want to start by saying that all of the people I got to work with on Team 4 Overwatch 2 were incredible. I can agree with that. Team 4 is awesome. 100%. They were warm, welcoming, fun and friendly, and so goddamn talented. There were so many great people on my team championing for me, and I'm grateful for their support. Unfortunately, however, I spent most of the year stressed out of my mind, working for 4 people's jobs at once, and having management make promises they had no intention of fulfilling, and I ultimately felt like I had no choice but to leave for my own mental health. Yep. In July 2023, I was invited to a meeting by art leadership and production to let me know they were interested in promoting me to lead VFX artist of the cosmetics team, skins, emotes, POTGs, etc. So plays of the game. I had only been there for 6 months and told them basically, if you're sure, lol. And yeah, that's a fair assumption at that point. It's like,
Yeah.
I've only been here 6 months. Why are you giving me so much, permission? Like, what's happening here, right? I'd
Yeah.
be wary of that as well. Said, but before accepting, I was adamant that we were all on the same page about the full role, what it meant, what I would be doing, and also what the promotion would come with, pay increase, title changes, and confirmed all of those details before going further. These conversations included other lead VFX, art directors, associate art directors, production directors, and also HR, and we were all happy. And I started the job effective immediately, with the details to come at the end of the week in writing. Ooh.
Uh-oh.
No, you don't do that. So there is a very similar situation that happened with me when I was in IT on a senior red team position. They wanted me to move over to a new job that was dealing with specifically finding all the botters because I was very good at it, and they refused to give me any of the information about the pay or the role until I started the position, and none of it was in writing yet, and I left instead. And the reason I did is because the moment you start that position without it in writing, they can construe that as maybe you've accepted the position already and you're just accepting all of the terms, and there's all this other kind of weird bullshit. And then it turns into a legal battle. It turns into a problem with that. So
Yeah.
I said, no, instead, I have all of my paid time off saved up, which I had the maximum, and I cashed that shit out at my current rate, which was a much higher rate, mostly because I had friends in payroll, and I asked them what the job was going to be, and it was a lot less, even though my manager wouldn't tell me. Ooh.
Really? That's
Yeah.
wild. They tried to give you a downgrade. Like I
they
don't
did.
really often hear about downgrades. That's kind of wild. I've had a very similar thing because I worked my previous company before my current one. It was, I would say it's akin to game stuff because I was working somewhere between 60 to 100 hours a week. Like every week, I'd work 14-hour days, just nonstop.
Feel it.
Dude, it was a rough time. It was a rough time. Me and my wife were first year married, and I'm working every hour of the day, every day. And I remember during that time, I was, oh yeah, you're now team lead. You're now doing this. You're now doing this. And, there was no change. And then finally, I was just like, okay, this is getting kind of weird. I've been doing this nonstop, and I'm getting absolutely nothing from this. And so when I finally was like, by the way, I'm leaving. I'm going to Netflix. They're like, oh no. Hey, let's like get your pay up. Let's do all these things. I'm like, no. I know how this works. Like that's not That's not working because you didn't do it to begin with. It doesn't
Yep.
mean you're going to keep on doing it going forward.
It's
You weren't
catch up now.
honest to begin with.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it was. It was like all my, because I'm a hacker, right? I've been a hacker for like 20 years, and you start to get a lot of bullshit detector when you're a social engineer, and like part of my big part of my job is being a social engineer, right? So like
Yeah.
my bullshit detector was going off the charts. I was like, dude, no, this is one of those like fight or flight responses where it's like, I know they're ripping me off. I need to reach out to my contacts. I reached out to my contacts. I found out they were ripping me off, and I was like, nope, we're gonna screw you right back and leave, and just did it. And I didn't actually have the job at Amazon lined up for that. So I took that paid time off money, which was paid at the full rate because I
Nice.
hadn't gotten the other role yet. And I used that as runway to go get the job at Amazon while I was sitting
That's
at home.
awesome.
Yep.
So did
And
you
that
did you
was
pre-know
enjoyable.
you wanted Amazon, or did you actually leave the job going, I don't know what to do, and then Amazon just like fell into your lap?
I left the job saying the best option, because I never anticipated leaving Blizzard. I never wanted to. I at that time in my life, I didn't have my resume and my cover letter on the market, which, by the way, you always should. If you're
Yeah.
in tech, always have your resume and cover letter on the market. Always be shopping, no matter what. And I
My
learned that
general
in that
rule of
moment.
thumb is that if they message you personally,
Yep.
I almost always take an interview. If
Yep.
I get some spam kind of marketing, like you can tell, and sometimes it even comes with underscores and stuff where they meant to put your name in, like then at that point I won't do it. But if someone sends me a personal letter, I will minimally give them a 30-minute chat about the job. That's like
Yep.
my general rule of thumb.
Yeah, I don't do that now, but I used to do that. Like when I was still on the market doing that kind of stuff. But now it's like I'm running a thing, so like I don't want to stop doing that.
Well, yeah. I mean, is there any job someone could offer you that you would want to stop running your own thing that's successful to go run someone else's thing? Right? I don't know if that's
No. And the reason why it'd be no isn't like for me, because maybe I could get better whatever at another place, but that would
It's
be
your own
letting down
thing.
every. Well, it's not even just that; it'd be letting down every person who works for me,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I'm not going to ever do that. Like I don't. An incremental increase for me, but devastating for every other person that relies on me. What's the point of that? Nothing. That would be awful. And no, not even close.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm stuck with
dude,
you guys
I totally feel
forever.
that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that as you build out what you're doing, you get to be that manager that you didn't have. You get to be the team lead that people didn't have. You get to have all of that stuff, and you get to be that guy. And so you get to pull a bunch of people out of something. And so it's like, how do you replace that?
Yeah,
You can't.
and that's actually, I've implemented a couple of things that I saw at Blizzard that did work. Like we had this thing called Email Mike, where if the system completely failed you, you could actually send an email to Mike Morheim as any employee in any position anywhere in the company, totally discreetly.
Who's Mike? Who's Mike? What is his position?
Mike Morheim, he's one of the founders of Blizzard, he's CEO, man.
Yeah, well, you got to say those. Because not everybody knows.
You don't know
Blizzard.
who Mike Morheim is? Oh my
I said
God,
not
this guy.
everybody. Okay, my goodness. Come on, Thor. You think everybody in your chat knew who he was? I bet you there's one person who refuses to say that they don't.
probably true.
they're just,
Everyone's seen
they're
Big
just like,
Mike.
oh yeah, totally Mike.
That's fine.
Yeah, so
That's
come on,
fine. No, it's-
co-founder.
yeah,
What are you, a
Mike-
loser?
Mike Morheim is one of the founders of Blizzard. So he's CEO, and he cares very passionately about the company, very, very much so. And so he had a thing called Email Mike, where you could send an email at any time to him, no matter what position you were in the company. You could be CS, you could be a janitor, it doesn't matter, right? And he would accept your email and he would talk to you, and he did it all the time. And if it was very
Nice.
serious, he would handle it. And I had to send one of those at one point, and he did handle it, right? So like those types of things do happen. And so I implemented the same thing in our studio, where I have a ticket system that any employee of mine can go and send in a ticket directly to me, goes to nobody else. It's just me and them, and that's totally fine, And I want to have things like that I knew worked, even at that kind of crazy scale, very massive company,
That's respectable.
and put that
We
in
have
there.
something similar at Netflix where we have something called the Open Q&A, which is a Google Doc, and you get to ask a question, and then one of the C-suite or sometimes a VP, like someone really high up that's particular to that specific strategy that you're asking about, will write a response, and then the history goes on forever. So we have like Open Q&A for the last 5 years, all the doc questions ever asked, all there. So and if you just don't understand something, or you want to say, why aren't we doing this, or why does this happen, you will get an answer. It's a good system.
I have a horrifying story for you in that line.
Let's hear it.
So Blizzard used to do the same thing at like Christmas parties and stuff like that. They do these Q&A sessions, and sometimes they do these big meetings where they'd get like a big hall and everyone would be in there and we'd all be talking, and you could go up in front of everyone with a microphone and ask questions, right? And
I love where this is going.
it's just like an open mic thing. And so we were having all this internal discussion about Heroes of the Storm, because Heroes of the Storm was built on the same stuff as StarCraft 2, and as such it was just as uniquely vulnerable to map hacks. It was exactly the same vulnerability. In fact, you could take a map hack for StarCraft 2 right off the market, change the memory address locations that it would point to, and you had a working map hack for Heroes of the Storm. And if you don't know what a map hack is, it shows where all of the opponents are on the map, even if you're not allowed to see those opponents, which gave you a significant advantage. Think League of Legends, but you can see the whole map at the whole time.
Yeah.
Awful, right? Horrible. So internally, the security team and the risk team, I was part of the security team time, the risk team, we told them, like, you need to fix this before this goes live, because you want this to be an esport. This can't be an esport if you do this.
Yeah.
It's impossible, right? And they were like, no, you don't know what you're talking about, all this kind of stuff. They didn't fix it. And it was bad, dude. Like, it was really bad. So during one of those meetings, one of these dudes comes up and he asks the question. He goes, well, what are you guys going to be doing about map hacks? And one of the C-suite guys, real smugly, I don't even remember which one it is, he goes, well, that's what we have a risk team for. And the guy said, well, I am the risk team. So what are you going to do about it? And the room just ate it, dude. Like, it was so, because the guy who walked up was a risk team member. And the only solution to that problem is you have to wait for a player to report somebody else that has cheated at the game. And then you have to manually review that game to see if he reacted to something in Fog of War. There's no other way to detect it. It's horrific, which is why if you look in StarCraft at the ends of the seasons, right, you have all these names that are like barcode names, and they don't get banned till the end of the season. That's why, because it's manual. It's awful. There's nothing else you could do with that. Because they're out of process map hacks. Yeah, they're out of process map hacks. There's nothing you can do for detection on that.
Dang.
And why is it even possible? Because they stored all of the location data for all the units on all of the clients, even though they were in Fog of War. But not a great way to do it.
That doesn't even sound like that hard of a problem. I mean, you already are sending down the data probably with TLS, encrypted and all that. So it's not like they can view the network packets.
So
it's just really down. It's just really down to, like, don't store things that aren't in memory yet.
The problem is you have to remember brokering servers. It's run on brokering servers, which means all of that data is on every one of the clients, man. That's
Dang.
it. It doesn't hold anything on the server itself. It holds it all inside of the clients. The brokering servers just transmit the data, and that's it. So F.
Yeah, F's in the chat.
Yeah. What does that mean? So a brokering server in this situation doesn't actually store any of the data on itself. It just transmits the data between the different clients. The clients are always aware of where all those units are, and they have to be based on that infrastructure. The only way to try and fix that is to try and do a client server model where the server holds all of that data, and the client is just kind of a dummy, right? Which is how League of Legends does it, which is why you can't use map hacks in League of Legends. There might be a small buffer zone around the Fog of War area where you can't see units, where it is still technically in memory, so that they can cache it, so when a unit walks out of Fog of War, they don't pop into existence. Yeah. So that's pretty normal.
That's what I would assume. So that way, like, if you did get to cheat, you could only cheat like 4 feet in front of you. You couldn't cheat the entire map. And it's just like, well, I mean, an advantage, but any player with skill would dominate the player without skill, right? We could all go, okay, yeah, we get that.
And someone actually brought up that sounds like peer-to-peer. It basically is, but it's obfuscating everyone's IP addresses because the brokering server stops your IP address from leaking to the other players. It's effectively the same model, but with the brokering server in place.
Yeah, that's why whenever you play StarCraft 2 and one person disconnects and then the whole game gets all gets all crazy, it's because there's that situation going on. All right, you want to keep on reading? Let's hear more about this. Let's go.
So these conversations included other lead VFX, art directors, associate art directors, production directors, and also HR, given the all happy. So we talked about that. The new role was all of my existing responsibilities and workload as a senior, becoming a line manager of 3 people immediately, managing
What's
our
a line
entire
manager, just so we understand what a line, because I actually don't. I only understand that in terms of restaurants, so I don't.
So I don't know what a line manager is. I've never heard that term inside the gaming industry. So my guess is that he was a manager for 3 people. Like maybe that's what they're using supervisor for. Because in the teams that I was on, we had a thing called a supervisor, and a supervisor was like a baby manager that was like a manager to like 3 to 5 people. So maybe that's what that is.
Such a strange
you get direct reports as a supervisor. We called it a supervisor. So I guess his was just a line manager was his position for that. Yeah, like kind of like a team lead, but not paying you like a team lead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Managing our entire outsourced VFX pipeline in China, that's a rough one. That's a team job.
That's
frankly.
nighttime. Yeah, that's a nighttime job too.
Yep. Because you're going to be at the wrong side of the world for that.
Perfectly, in fact.
Yep. So plus additional lead things, planning much more meetings. Friday of the past week comes. Nothing but the production director does announce my promotion to lead to the whole team on the Thursday. It's official. It's happening. The whole team knows. I even tweet about it because I'm so excited. We're all Gucci. So he actually tweets it out here and he says, "Oh, they sent an email about working,
Aw.
announcing my promotion." He's so excited about it, right? Said, "On my first week as lead, my new manager tells me that we are going to have to fire one of my new reports because he won't RTO."
RTO
What is
means real-time
know.
officer.
RTO. I don't remember these damn terms. I've been out of pocket for so long. Return to office policy. That's what it is.
Oh,
So that-
yeah.
That's spamming it. Return to office. So when you're, I guess during the pandemic, everybody went to go do that, and this guy doesn't want to return to the office. He works from home. Wants to keep working from home. He won't RTO. Won't return to office. Fire him. This happened to a lot of people. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hate acronyms, by the way. So he said, he's waiting for medical accommodation because he is a carer for his parents. Them, yeah, laughing. We're not going to do that for a junior. That
Ooh.
is a lot more normal than you think. And I hate it. I hate it a lot. Like,
Is it just the is there really like a culture of like looking down on every experience rung?
yes. That
Is
is
that why
exactly
there's so many titles like assistant director or associate director versus a director versus a team lead versus a supervisor versus a manager?
the way that I felt about it is high school never ends, man. And it was like that through most of my career there. It felt like I was working a lot of the times. It felt like it, not every team, mind you.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it felt like I was working with a bunch of people in high school, and there were a lot of cliques. There were a lot of bullshit. There was a lot of looking down on other teams. There was a lot of group culture kind of shit. And then I went to Amazon Game Studio, and that was all gone. And I was in a room with a bunch of adults, and it was night and day, man. Like
So
night
can
and
I
day.
ask you a quick question? Because
Sure.
this Mike fella sounds like he didn't really, I guess, subscribe to that kind of model, and he was one of the
Yeah.
founders / CEO.
Yeah.
Then how does that type of culture bloom if you have somebody that is opposed to it so high up? Like, was he just
Because
not
they
firing the people high enough up to like prevent that?
Yeah.
Because culture flows
So-
downwards, right?
It can. Once you get to too large of a structure, it creates these festering pockets, right?
Yeah.
So what ended up happening in this case, and I remember when Blizzard got sued by the state of California for all
I
the,
don't
the
remember. They've been
wrongdoings.
sued a lot of times. But
Yeah.
was this the
They
one
got
with all the
sued, but-
marches and everything? And there's, I think it was
Yeah.
like something with sexism. Was that what it was?
All
I
of that
can't
stuff, and it was bad, dude. Like it
Yeah.
was really bad. There was a lot of horrible stuff that went on. It was awful. When that happened, I'm actually in a Facebook group called Blizzard Alumni, which is all the old, people who used to work at Blizzard. And Mike and his wife actually wrote like a big email to everybody, like a big message to everybody, apologizing to all of them because he didn't know a lot of the wrongdoings that were going on. He was insulated from because middle management would trap it in there. And
Yeah.
I saw the exact same thing when I tried to report things up that were awful. And I eventually had to do an email Mike. And when I did an email Mike, it was handled in 24 hours when I had been waiting weeks before that. And they'd gum it up in middle management to protect people that are, inside of their group. So you get these bad little pockets where not everybody's bad, but this pocket is bad and it festers.
And it insulates it, yeah.
And
And,
it-
then you
and
have
it
this
ins-
buffer
yep.
zone where the person upper can't even hear it or see it because it's fog of war. You have fog of war, and they don't have map hacks.
That's exactly what it is, man. And it's really devastating to think about. And there's what I learned from that and why I run my studio the way I do. I run my studio like a D&D team, 3 to 5 people. That's the development team. If it's the right size for a Dungeons and Dragons team, you don't have miscommunication. You can all sit at the table
Agreed.
together. The whole team that's working on whatever it is you're working on, you can sit together and work on a game together. And that's it. Because once you start expanding beyond that, these types of things can happen. Doesn't mean they will, but they can. And you need to have a lot of other checks and balances in places to stop these sort of festering hives from growing, right?
Let me ask you a quick question. Were the VPs, like, I think a very healthy thing that you can see in orgs is that VPs and like super high up people meet with individual contributors like once a month or once a quarter, right? So there's this kind of reaching down that reaches across the, if you will, the blood barrier to go into an area in which they don't get insight into.
Mike
Was
did
that
that.
happening at Blizzard where
Yeah.
people higher up were crossing boundaries?
So Mike did that. Mike Morheim would do that.
Yeah.
So what he would do is
obviously
he
Mike
would,
did that. He was
yeah.
good at that. But anyone
he
else?
would do things. No. He did this thing called CS for a day or QA for a day, and he would actually go down in the trenches and do their job for like 24 to 72 hours and just fix everything. And like he'd be like, "What? This doesn't make any sense. Fix this." And it would be things that like CS would be complaining about for like 9 months, 10 months. And it got fixed in a day because Mike Morheim stepped down and did their job for a day and was like, "This is inefficient and stupid. Stop it." You know. And
I'm just shocked that he didn't
was the
know
only one
any
who
of
did
these
it.
things going wrong. Like,
It's hard, man. You got a 5,000 person company.
Yeah,
You can't
fair.
see every piece of that, you know, and it's even building a corp now for myself, there are little pieces that happen in our Discord's got 77,000 people in it, right? Massive community. There are moderation actions that go on every day that I know nothing of because
Yeah,
I'm on stream
fair.
all day. Like I'm running the stream and the mods handle it. And we talk about some of them later if they're egregious enough, but some of them, they're the only ones who see it, you know? And like that's kind of how that goes. Eventually, that can spiral out of control. You know, it can turn into a situation where maybe one of those mods is cherry picking or allowing toxicity to fester or covering
Yeah.
for some people, right? Which is why we have a system in place where any moderator can send me a ticket so I can fix it. If there is a problem like that, I can go and do the investigation and we can handle it, right? So like as your structure grows, you have to put these checks and balances in
Yeah.
place. But the larger it grows, the more blind spots you have. And I think that's really what affected Blizzard the most in that regard. And it's sucks, but large org, man. The only other way to fix this is you got to have a lot of oversight, ton of oversight.
Yeah, and Discord is well, I mean, your problem is uniquely challenging because everyone there is effectively volunteers, right? At Blizzard,
they're
everyone
paid.
there was. Well, I mean, in the sense that
Oh, yeah.
your 77,000 people there, those are all people who just want to be. They're interested in what you're doing, and I'm sure you must have a small set that you're actually working with day to day that are paid, but a large
Yeah.
portion are just people there because they're interested. And so how like. At Blizzard, though, every person there theoretically was paid, I assume, whether it wasn't that good, but they were still paid nonetheless.
Unless you're
And so,
like an
there's-
unpaid intern or something weird.
Yeah. Yeah, unless there's something truly messed up. But you'd think like that feels easier to manage than Discord. Discord is just a Wild West. Half the time it is the Wild West. I have to rely on people just to make good calls because you can't, just because there's no pre-screening for you to enter into the Discord. So that requires a lot of just like, you have to trust people to make good decisions. Whereas
like
like at a
customers coming
company,
in the
you
door,
have
but it's
the
on the internet.
pre-screening. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
just makes it. That's where you're probably right. Like in the sense that I think everyone looks at a problem that's difficult, and if you've never really thought about it and lived it for the first time, it feels simple and obvious to fix.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like in the actual practical application, it's damn near impossible. And Mike probably truly just didn't actually have control or even have the ability to affect
There was
the
nothing you
change.
could do.
I still even whenever I hear that, I still think about this. Call me crazy, but it just feels like if I were in that position, I would have to say, okay, I can't affect change. This is clearly continuously going wrong. The only way to fix this is that I have to do like a mass middle management layoff. Like even all the good ones, like I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be a dick, but something's wrong. And there's
Honestly,
some broken thing in here. We have to try something different.
I think there's a better way. And I think the better way is to hire an outside team to do investigations inside the company discreetly. That's how you'd have to do it.
Ooh, some sort of like almost like some sort of hacking, like offensive hacking, but it's offensive HR.
Yep, you'd have to hire an outside company to do investigations within the company. It's an external audit, so they have no ties to anyone inside of the company. They have no bias in that regard, and then you do that. That's the only thing that you can possibly do. Would it be effective? Maybe, but would be the only effective thing at that point.
Dude,
And I
that's
think
such
they
a
did have
great
an
idea, but so hard. How would you get?
It is.
Because you'd have to get people organically placed in higher positions throughout the company that are undercut. Like this is like double agent stuff you got going on here.
Well, I mean, think about it this way, right? Like, just think about like Amazon, the way that Amazon is structured. There was no bullshit there. There was no drama that I saw, right?
Yeah.
And I was there for a while. I was there for over a year and didn't see even a lick of that, right? But I'll tell you one thing: their security systems were fantastic. If you went to your desk without badging in, if you tailgated someone, a member of the security team would be at you in 30 seconds every time. And they'd be like, you need to get up out of your desk and go badge in right now. I have never seen that anywhere else. And that shows me a company that is like properly set up. So if they have that level of physical security in place at all hours of the day, all the time, they likely have other set layers of security in place. It's not a mom and pop shop. It's not a massive company run, like that. It's not. It's actually a company.
Okay, fair. All right, we can move on to this next one.
Okay.
It's
yeah,
wild.
So,
It's wild though. I could keep talking about this forever. That's why I'm like, okay, we should probably
yeah, we
keep
could.
going.
So
Yeah.
another lead on the team offers to deliver the news for me because it's my first week as lead, and the person we are supposed to fire is one of my closest friends on the team. He is given until the end of the month to either relocate or leave. We're all distraught. I'm now doing my senior role, my lead role, and now all of the work that this great VFX artist was doing. They then refused to hire on an intern, another one of my reports, who is incredibly talented and we all love, so I add the work they were doing to my own plate. I got ads again. I'm going to wait.
Okay.
Gotta
Oh, you got
wait.
ads. Okay, yeah, we can wait.
Yeah,
We can
Jeff
wait for a
Bezos
second.
jump scared, dude.
Dude.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I run ads
Oh,
on my
I have
stream.
ads too.
and
I have
yeah,
ads
nice.
too. Do you think they're
Perfect.
aligned?
I don't know. Maybe.
Are our cycles aligned right
aligned.
now?
I don't know. We are. We've crossed the stream, so it makes sense.
Yeah. Wild. They just Discord unites us even in ads.
It's true. It's true. But yeah, when I run ads, I do breaks for everything. I put a big Jeff Bezos head on there. It's quite funny.
Hey, by the way, what day are you arriving for the Streamer Awards? I'll be there on Friday, I think around 1. I was
me
going to
look.
come a day
It's-
early and leave a day late.
That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing it daily. So Friday's the 16th. Yeah, I'll be there. We should hang.
Okay. Yeah. Do you know Sushi Dragon?
Dude. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Him and I were going to do something. You want to come crash the Sushi Dragon IRL stream and go eat sushi and hang out
That
with
sounds
him?
cool as shit. Dude, his augmented stuff is crazy.
Yeah, it's super crazy. We could do a pretty fun little thing.
Yeah. No, I'm down. I'm super down. That'd be a lot of fun, man.
You know,
Hell
he
yeah.
lives in Bozeman. He lives in Bozeman, my alma mater. That's where I
I had
grew
no
up and
idea.
stuff. Yeah.
I grew up in Orange County, but I grew up in like Tustin. That's kind of where I was at.
What's
And then I
Tustin?
moved. Weird, mostly. It's like Irvine, but with crime.
Oh, fantastic. That sounds like a good time.
It's right across the freeway. Where the crime happens. The
Yeah.
barrier there. Yeah.
Dude, is that not the weirdest thing that does actually happen? We had that in
Yeah.
Billings, Montana. There was a railroad. And we
Yeah, it's a
actually
barrier.
had the wrong side of the tracks. And one
Yeah.
side was like clean and nice, and the other side it was just like, welcome to Oakland, right? Like it's just like you cross that bridge or the railroad track, and it's immediately worse. I had a shooting at my job.
Yeah.
I was
dude,
a lifeguard.
I'm
We had
trying to
two
move outta
girls
here.
watching a kiddie pool, and I lived in Montana, so it's a different world. And some people jumped the fence and beat up the girls. And so they said, okay, from here on out, girls can't watch the kiddie pool by themselves. So someone has to go and watch the kiddie pool with them. And so they selected me. And I kid you not, this is the exact phrase. I'm not making it up. I'm not sugarcoating it or exaggerating it. My boss at the time, who worked for the state, pulled me aside, handed me a switchblade, very illegal, and said, if any Indians jump the fence, you got to stab them.
What kind
That
of
was-
madhouse did you live? What?
That was my job when I was 18 years old, teaming with testosterone and a switchblade. Like, hell yeah, we got switch. We're just going down.
Jeez, I'm amazed you survived.
I know.
What kind of?
It was the
kind of a
craziest part of
crazy
my life.
environment that is. That's
Yeah.
nuts, man. Jesus.
Anyways, sorry. Okay, we can go
I'm
on
totally
now.
just derailed now. Yeah, no, goddamn.
we
let's see.
can talk more about.
So he's doing
that
all this
later.
extra work now. Yeah.
Yeah.
A month goes by, and I've now sent an email or Slack message every other day to find out what's happening with the pay increase and title change. So his pay has not increased despite doing all this extra work.
Yeah.
His title has not changed despite it being announced.
And he lost
I'm
a
told that-
teammate, so he lost the intern. So he's actually doing even bonus work now.
Yep. He says, I'm told it has to wait until August because that's when all the promotions happen, but don't worry, it's all happening.
Oh no.
No, dude. No, dude. That is, that bothers the shit out of me. No,
Yeah.
that's not good at all. That's really scary stuff. I then discovered that I am earning less than 50% of every other lead VFX artist at Blizzard. So much so that as a lead, my salary is lower than every person I am managing. I send more emails. I'm told it's because I'm in the UK and my salary is based on market value, not my value.
Oh, dude. So I'm gonna throw something out there. Okay. I think that location-based pay is kind
Ass.
of is kind
It's
of
ass.
stupid.
Yeah.
It really bothers me. Like I get a 5% pay decrease or a 15% pay decrease because I live in Rapid City, South Dakota. Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt me. Like I'm not like, oh gosh, it's the worst thing ever. But still, it's like it's also super stupid.
That being said, when I worked at Blizzard, I was a senior red team specialist, and I was paid 36% of industry standard inside of my own area. So
Yeah. You
You know.
lived in California. You lived at the place, and you still
yeah.
got
and
crushed.
the job that I went on to after all of that was hacking power plants for the federal government. So it's not like I was lacking the ability.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you had the skills to pay the bills,
Yeah,
but
just a little bit. Yeah, they just wouldn't pay. That was the whole point with that. Yeah, that was my last job. Yeah, I was hacking power plants for the federal government. I worked for the DOE. I also have 3 black badges from DEF CON. I'm a hacker. That is
Yeah.
what I. Yeah, that's my career. Yeah.
you actually hack. This isn't
Yeah.
like fake hacking. You
Although somebody did say on Twitter that I was a hobbyist hacker in my earlier career, which was very funny to me. I was like, yes, what a hobbyist, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess technically it has to be a hobby for you to be that good also. It's not
That's
only
true.
just full time, it also has to be a hobby. So,
It is.
I mean, arguably
Technically correct.
semantically correct, but kind of a dick move, like
A little bit dig. Yeah.
little dick right there.
There we go. That's very funny. So another month passes, and August turns out to be no. It's actually September now
Ooh,
for some
classic.
reason. But don't worry, it's coming. It's definitely a promotion, and there's definitely a pay increase. I continue.
Hello, Happy New Year. আরে ভালো আছি, মায়ের এই 30 তারিখে কেমো ছিল তো একটু ব্যস্ত ছিলাম। একদম একদম পারফেক্ট, 4টে হয়ে গেছে, অল নেগেটিভ, শরীরে আর বেশি নেই, পুরো ঝিঝি ব্যাপার হয়ে গেছে একদম। তুই যবেই ডাকবি ভাই, তোর সাথে ওই হ্যাপি নিউ ইয়ার ওই 31st আর হলো না। পরের বছর তুই থাকবি না আমি থাকবো, পরের বছর তুই কাজে চলে যাবি, আমি কোথায় থাকবো কে জানে। হুম হুম। হুম, আজকে 52 নাম্বার হলো না? দেখি মানে সবই দেখি আমি। কি যেন বলছিলাম? ভালো লাগে, তোর গ্রোথ ওপরে উঠছে পুরো এখন। তুই এই টিসিএস এর এটা ফিল আপ করেছিলিস? ভালো করেছিস। এখন রোজ এখন প্রোডাক্টিভ ডে যাচ্ছে তোর এখন। কালকে কলেজ যাবি না তো? হ্যাঁ, এখন আর কি আছে। ও মেলাও হয়েছে ওখানে? মেলাও হয়েছে এবারে ওখানে তোদের? ও যা শেষ হয়ে গেছে। হুম। ও তুই ওখানে গেছিলিস না? আন্টি আর ও, আন্টি তুই আর ও? আচ্ছা, আচ্ছা। কালকে ও, হুম, ঠিক আছে। আমার খুব ইচ্ছে ছিল এবারে ওই তোদের ওই 31st এ করার। হুম। অরিজিৎ যায়নি না? ওই 31st এ? আহ, ওই শরীর টরীর ভালো আছে তো? বাহ! আমারও ওই চলে যাচ্ছে। ঠিক। খেয়ে নে। খেয়ে তারপর আবার স্ট্রিম কর।
কতক্ষণ হলো আজকে? আচ্ছা। তোর? কোনটা পাঠাস তো আমাকে, আমি দেখিনি। ও, কি করেছিলিস ওখানে? আহ, খুব ভালো। তোর এই স্ট্রিমটা করে মনে হয় বেশি মজা লাগছে না? হ্যাঁ, তুই তো সেই দিনকে স্ট্যাটাস ইউএস থেকে বেশি আসে। হ্যাঁ। ও, হ্যাঁ, বাহ বাহ। বট অ্যাকাউন্ট? কিসে রে? প্লেসমেন্টে তো? না না না। ওই দুটো পরীক্ষা তো দেবো, নিমসেট আর জেকা। বাবা বলছে ওই বাইরেটা, ওই গুজরাট বা সাউথ ইন্ডিয়ার দিকে চলে যাওয়ার ইচ্ছা আছে। ঠিকই, ওই ক্রিস্ট, ওই ক্রিস্ট ইউনিভার্সিটি। খেয়ে আয়, খেয়ে আয়। তুই, আমি একদিন আসবো, দাঁড়া। সে তো করবো। না না, আমার যাওয়ার ইচ্ছা আছে, তোর বাড়িতেই আমার যাওয়ার ইচ্ছা আছে। আন্টির সাথেও দেখা হয়নি অনেকদিন। আন্টি জানে আমার মায়ের এরকম হয়েছে? ও, কোনো ব্যাপার না। ও হা হা। হ্যাঁ। হুম। না, সত্যি মা আগের থেকে এখন অনেক বেটার। ঠিক। তোরা সবাই জিজ্ঞাসা করতিস আমার মায়ের কথা। হ্যাঁ, আমার বাড়ি এই যে মায়ের 5 নম্বর কেমোটা হয়ে গেলে মায়ের একটা পার্টি হবে, তখন আমি দেখে নেবো যাদেরকে ডাকার, আমি দেখে তোকে প্ল্যানটা বললাম। ও শিট। মেমোরেবল। হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে। ওকে। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, টাটা।
continue to be overworked and exhausted, but hopeful. Fool. Fool. There it is.
Hey, to be fair though, the only place you don't have hope is hell, right? That's Dante's Inferno, right? Right above the pathway to hell is abandon hope, all ye who enter. And so hope,
Yeah.
a good thing though, can lead to this type of stuff.
The problem is he's in a emotionally distraught state. He's beat up from the work. He's not able to fight. So the only thing he has is, well, maybe it'll be okay. Maybe I'll just keep doing this. Maybe it's going to work out. I'm already in. I might as well go all in, right? And I had the exact same experience when I was at Blizzard.
Oof.
And I broke out of that because my bullshit detector went off too hard.
Yeah.
And that was it. And,
Man, I feel so bad for this guy. This is crazy.
Yeah, it's the same. So like this echoes the shit out of what I I went through, so I understand. And it's a pattern of an issue with a lot of people there. So another few weeks pass, and it's getting to 3 months being a lead. So I sent an email out to everyone, directors, VPs, HR, leads, you name it, telling them that if there is no written information by September 1st, I will stop doing the role immediately. Suddenly,
job.
people have something to say. This entire time, HR have not responded once, and they're finally inviting me for a quick call. It is this call, and HR asked me, what promotion? I have no idea what you're talking about. At this point, I raised a formal complaint. I had months of messages, emails that I sent to HR explaining that I was talking about, and they finally reply with, you seem to be confused. There is no promotion. Leadership is a lateral move. It's just a change of responsibilities. There is no pay increase.
Can we
I
get
was
a quick
livid.
TO? Can we get a quick timeout here?
Yeah.
Leadership is a lateral move.
No, it's not.
I mean,
No,
well,
it's not.
okay, so let me counter that. There is at least one counter that if you go from, say, principal engineer to director, one would argue you have a similar impact radius, and that's maybe a lateral move.
There's still a title change.
Yeah,
and
but
he
there's a
didn't even get the
title change and a responsibility change and a work change. One could argue it's a lateral move if you have the same impact. You just have an impact in an orthogonal way, if one could argue. But this does not sound like he was not a principal person going to a role of equivalent thing. He was being promoted and gaining new things and now starting to manage people.
Yep.
This sounds like the craziest thing I've ever heard.
The general standard at Blizzard was monthly reports with people too, which means he had 3 months of direct reports from people that he was managing, and then he was told that he's not getting a pay increase for this in any way.
Yeah.
After being told, see, here's the thing that I want to know, right? He was receiving these communications. Were those verbal communications or were those email communications? That's the biggest
because
one for me.
email would be and Slack, because Slack is audible or auditable. And so those, I mean, I assume those would come with legal responsibilities versus verbal ones. I mean, you got the whole he said, she said problem.
Because he said, I had months of messages, emails that I sent to HR to explain what I was talking about, and they finally replied with all of this. He had months of messages that he sent to HR.
Yeah.
Who was sending him these messages under what communication style? Here's the biggest thing to you guys. Always get it in writing.
Yeah.
If it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. If they say something's going to happen, so you say, cool, I'll do that once it's in writing. That's it. This is not happening until that's a contract. I won't do that work until it's on paper. That's it.
Thing I like to practice personally, a lot of times whenever there's kind of this type of talk that's happening, frequently, like, because a lot of times there's just like informal talk about, hey, what's going on? Hey, would you like to look into this? Hey, would you like, that will always happen at some levels. And so frequently what I'll do is right after that, I will follow up with the Slack message and being like, hey, I do feel like this is a good move. Are you sure we want to move in this direction? Like I get them to agree in a more formal sense ever before moving on, just because, not everything requires paper. Because some of it is just literal, like I'm changing what I'm doing for these set of reasons, and I just want to make sure everyone knows that I'm doing this, but I always
yeah.
try to make sure that there's a paper trail of some sort. Like, this is why I've made all my decisions ever.
Yeah, no, it's super important to do that. It's always important to make sure that the other party is bought into the level that you can turn around and go, no, you said you'd do this. Here's the paper trail. Now what are you going to do? You know,
Yeah.
and that's it. Make a legal paper trail for yourself always. And I don't know if he did that here. It sounds like he didn't, right? So he said, I was livid naturally and asked that any normal, rational human would quote, why would
Hello,
anybody
people.
want the promotion then? Which obviously then did the old, I can see you're frustrated and I can see how you misinterpreted this. Oh, Jesus, man.
If someone tells me I know how you feel, I see you're frustrated, there's nothing makes me want to like physically slap a person more. Like that's where like I cross that boundary and I'm like, I'm too hot to even talk right now.
When that happens, and then you just back off. You're like, okay, there's two options here. I cool off or I murder a person, right? And I don't want to murder a person because that sends you to jail. So I'm just going to stop. We're going to wait until I cool down for a second. And then I'm going to talk to you rationally and directly about how much I want you to shove your head up your ass. Like that's pretty much how that goes, right?
It's the modern empathy movement, right? They use all these words that sound like they care about you, but it's just like somehow so much worse. I'd rather have someone be like, you didn't notice that, idiot? I'd rather have you say that than be like, oh, I feel you. Oh man.
Yeah, I understand.
100%.
You know, I feel the way that you're feeling right now. I totally understand what it is. Maybe we can circle back on this later. You know, I don't want to boil the ocean. It's that.
We talk about this in October. October's our month to talk about this. We'll come back to it.
Hello,
October is the month to
everyone.
bring
How are
these
you
things
doing?
up. Yeah. And then in October, it's like, you know, the new year is very close. So let's talk about it then. You know, after the Christmas move, you know, all of the stuff in the holidays.
Absolutely. Then we got Chinese New Year afterwards, so we got to keep
Chinese
going.
New Year. It's just a really tough time right now, you know. There's a lot of things going on globally, and it's gonna get in the way of that, you know, business management stuff. God, I hate it, dude. I know it all. It bothers the hell out of me. I've lived it. So the investigation from the formal complaint comes back after a few weeks, and after some careful deliberation, decides that HR did nothing wrong and followed all processes correctly. So
Really?
I hand in my resignation about an hour later, but it doesn't end there. Because no, HR then told me that because of my role as a lead, I had gained inexplicable knowledge that would put me on a business risk to work anywhere else. So they're activating a non-compete clause that restricts me from working anywhere at all for 3 months. And you may be
Really?
rightfully thinking, oh, so this is a paid 3 months, right? You can't stop someone from working at all for 3 months without paying them. Incorrect. That is exactly
sounds
what
like
they
extortion.
did. Yep, that is exactly what they did, and unfortunately completely legal because get screwed, I guess. And that's it. And
Hold on,
that's the thing.
because he was in the UK, right? So he's in the UK.
Yep.
How did
You don't
I
need to
didn't
know-
realize that the UK. I mean, that's crazy that you can enact that and even across country boundaries like
That's
that.
what I'm wondering. So I'm wondering at that point, I'd hire a lawyer. If I was in that type of a situation, I'd be like, you're doing what? Okay, you're going to talk to my legal team now. We'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
Because I'm not well versed in EU law. One of my moderators is. He's actually a copyright lawyer in the UK.
Okay.
But like that seems wrong. And I would talk to a lawyer, right? My
Yeah.
legal advice is never to give
Yeah.
it's actually a company.
Okay, fair. All right, we can move on to this next one.
Handle it, right? So like as your structure grows, you have to put these checks and balances in
Yeah.
place.
Radius, and that's maybe a lateral move.
There's still a title change.
but yeah,
and
but
he So I'm just going to stop. We're going to
Yeah.
wait until I cool down for a second, and then I'm going to talk to you rationally and directly about how much I want you to shove your head up your ass. Like that's pretty much how that goes, right?
It's the modern empathy movement, right? They use all these words that sound like they care about you, but it's just like somehow so much worse. I'd rather have someone be like, "You didn't notice that, idiot?" I'd rather have you say that than be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I feel you." Oh man.
Yeah, I understand.
100%. 100%.
You know, I feel the way that you're feeling right now. I totally understand what it is. Maybe we can circle back on this later. I don't want to boil the ocean. It's the dead.
We talk about this in October. October's our month to talk about this. We'll
Yeah.
come back to
October is the month to bring these things up. Yeah. And then in October, it's like, the new year is very close. So let's talk
Yeah.
about it then. After the Christmas move, all of the stuff in the holidays.
it. Absolutely. Then
let's-
we got Chinese
every-
New Year afterwards, so we got to
Yeah,
keep
Chinese
going.
New Year. It's just a really tough time right now. There's a lot of things going on globally, and it's going to get in the way of that. Business management stuff. God, I hate it, dude. I know it all. It bothers the hell out of me. I've lived it. So the investigation from the formal complaint comes back after a few weeks, and after some careful deliberation, decides that HR did nothing wrong and followed all processes correctly. So
Really?
I handed my resignation about an hour later, but it doesn't end there. Because no, HR then told me that because of my role as a lead, I had gained inexplicable knowledge that would put me on a business risk to work anywhere else. So they're activating a non-compete clause that restricts me from working anywhere at all for 3 months. And you may be
Really?
rightfully thinking, oh, so this is a paid 3 months, right? You can't stop someone from working at all for 3 months without paying them. Incorrect. That is
It
exactly
sounds
what
like
they
extortion.
did. And, yep, that is exactly what they did, and unfortunately completely legal because get screwed, I guess. And that's it. And yeah,
Hold on,
that's the thing.
because he was in the UK, right? So he's in the UK.
Yep.
How did I didn't realize that the UK? I mean, that's crazy that you can enact that, and even across country boundaries like
That's
that.
what I'm wondering. So I'm wondering at that point, I'd hire a lawyer. If I was in that type of a situation, I'd be like, "You're doing what? Okay, you're going to talk to my legal team now. We'll see how this goes."
Yeah.
Because I'm not well versed in EU law. One of my moderators is. He's actually a copyright lawyer in the UK.
Okay.
But like that seems wrong, and I would talk to a lawyer, right? My
Yeah.
legal advice is never to give legal advice. I say talk to a lawyer. Talk to
that is
that
the
seems
best
like
legal advice
yeah.
ever is to go find someone that knows the law.
go talk to a lawyer. Yeah.
Generally, my
Thank
general
you,
rule is
Protos.
that
He does.
if you feel like something's deeply wrong, and you cannot explain anything other than it just seems like a massive human rights violation, go talk to a lawyer. Just
said-
go.
You say he can't afford a lawyer? No, you can. You'd be surprised because a lot of the times what you can do is you can talk to a lawyer under certain constraint of say like, hey, I'd like to talk to you about an issue and we can see if we can go from there. And a lot of those introductory things are either not very expensive or are free, depending on what's going on. And if it's a legal battle like this, there's a lot of laws in the UK that absolutely cover your ass as a worker. Like,
কপিরাইট দিলেই বা কি আমার চ্যানেল মনিটাইজ নেই দেবে না আর আমি মনিটাইজ করবো না কোনোদিন
Europe does not
Yeah.
screw around with that. The UK specifically doesn't screw around with that. So
And then on top of that, a
talk
lot
to
of
a lawyer.
lawyers will be glad they like large corporate like things like this are huge paychecks, and a lot of lawyers
হ্যাপি নিউ ইয়ার বাই দ্য ওয়ে
will go in and be like, I take 20%. That's that. Right?
Yep.
I've seen a lot of people say, I will just go through this because we're going to win this one.
Yep, and we'll take a percentage of your gains, and that's
Yeah.
it. And you'll win something, and we'll win something, and everybody goes home happy. So there are situations like that, and you'd be surprised. There are even some that will do it pro bono. There's even like systems in place based on the country that you're in that may fight for you on behalf of the country and say you cannot treat our citizens this way. There's all kinds of stuff like that, man. So like, there is never a time where you should be like, oh, I can't see a lawyer because I might not be rich enough to see it. No, talk to a lawyer. Find out
Yeah.
for sure what your options are.
Because you
Always.
have a 3-month unpaid vacation at this point. So
Yep.
it does sound like no matter what,
Yeah,
things are
should talk
already
to a
going to
lawyer.
be bad enough. You should talk to a lawyer.
Yeah. So if anyone has continued so far, thank you for listening. So, oh wait, here we go. I said I can't survive for 3 months without pay. I have a mortgage, and they looked at me in the eye and said, "Well, you probably shouldn't have signed the contract then."
Smiley face.
Within a few minutes, I was locked out of Slack email, and that was the end of my time at Blizzard. And yeah, that's exactly how that goes. They kick you right out. When I was in QA, we went through the first mass firing Blizzard ever did, called the Blizzard 600. And the way that it went down was horrific. When we were coming into the front doors, into the building, all the managers were there that morning. Everyone's like, what the hell's going on? And they directed you to the right or to the left. If you went to the right, you were going to HR and you were fired. If you went to the left, you were going to your desk. Problem with this, not only is it horrible to see this happening, right? There was a back door to the building that was used by like 50% of the staff. So after all of this went on, the managers had to go around to people's desks and find the ones who had gone in from the back that were supposed to be fired and go pick them up from their desks in front of everyone. The rest of the team, about an hour later, we asked the managers, hey, can we have the rest of the day off? This is horrific. And they said no. We walked out anyway.
Did they at least give you, like, say, a task of 30 items to do and see who could leave the fastest?
No, not that time. That one was just fire everybody like with a shotgun, dude. Like it was just like random people on random teams. In fact, we were picking up work for people for like 6 months after that, finding tasks that like just disappeared. And it directly impacted the games, like directly impacted that because there was just shit that just didn't get picked up because like a whole section of the team would be gone. All the people and their supervisor just gone. So who's going to know? Who's going to know about that, right?
Yeah,
So
just people
horrific.
going, wait, what happened? Why?
Yeah.
I thought we were looking into this.
So when these types of things happen, when they fire someone, they fire them, just gone, and
Wow.
and it's devastating. It's 100% devastating.
Wow.
So let's see. I also want to sincerely thank everyone who purchased a
you
mentorship
skipped
session.
one.
Oh, did I
back.
skip one?
Yeah,
Oh,
one
if
back.
anyone has continued so far, thank you for listening. I don't know what the point of this is, but I need to get off my chest. Blizzard had every opportunity to do the right thing, and they continually failed at that. And yeah, no, I agree with this. The problem is once you start down the route of you have pissed off a clique, you've pissed off a group, you have bothered an in crowd inside of that environment, it all goes downhill from there.
Yeah.
Because those little festering groups network with each other in a way that you can no longer win. And when that happens, the only thing that matters is yourself and getting out of there and putting yourself in a proper position. And that's this kind of a thing is what was happening to me. So I bailed out before they could pull the trigger on me, before they could screw up my life. And I said, nope, uno reverso, give me all my money, I'm out. And that's it.
Dang.
And I bailed.
Yeah, I mean, luckily I was on the other side of the click. I was on the good side at the previous company, but I was still, even by management, getting
Blasted by stuff.
Yeah, it was not very great, but nonetheless, the people on the other side of the click. And here's the hard part is when I was really young, I definitely fell into the asshole range for sure. And I look back on a lot of mistakes I've made, and knowing what I know now, I wish I could talk to myself and explain like wisdom. Man, it's hard because I think when you're on the other side of things, it's not directly hitting you, so you don't really say anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's so easy to fall into it's not necessarily my problem. Yeah, this other person is screwing up. It's not, it hurts. It sucks.
Yeah.
It feels bad now that I'm older and maybe a bit wiser in my years.
I went all abandoned on that because I grew up in early Blizzard, back when Blizzard was first starting, right? And those core values mean a lot to me. The way that I always feel about it is you sign a contract, you follow that contract. That's how that works, right? If you're going to do it, do the job. And those core values were part of that contract. And I watched over the years as people did not follow those core values or twisted them into weapons to hurt people that were just trying to do their jobs correctly. And I always fought for it. And it put me in a lot of really, on a lot of bad sides with people. But positioning yourself in a way where you can't be defeated, you can still fight those types of things. It's just very hard. Like one of the ones that I fought against was when I was in QA, there was an issue that happened where I had to go send an email Mike, and the people that were involved were QA localization. QA localization were the victims of this, and they were individuals that had green cards, right? So they lose employment, they get deported. That's the whole thing with that, right?
Oh.
So the position, so they can't fight.
Yeah.
Because if they fight, they could be on the bad side, and now they have to go back to the country that